I am Jay Leeming, and this is the Crane Bag Podcast. Thank you for joining me. We are exploring the great epic known as the Mahabharata, an epic from India. And what does an epic do? It weaves together heaven and earth. It weaves together the past, the future, many generations. It weaves together the eternal and the daily, the humdrum with the divine realms, the seen and the unseen. And the story so far, well, many things have happened. But we remember Bhishma. Bhishma, who is the son of the river goddess Gunga. Bhishma, who made a vow to give up forever the love of woman. He made that vow to ensure peace in the kingdom, so there would not be war between any children he had and the children of Satyavati. We remember Pandu the Pale, who died in the forest. We remember his sons, Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, Bhima, the son of the wind, Arjuna, the son of Indra, king of the gods, and Nakula and Sahadeva, the twins with the shining eyes. We remember Duryodhana and Dushasana, the two sons of Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, the two leading sons of 100 sons, in fact, born to Gandhari. Those are the two factions, two sets of cousins, and we will follow them throughout this story. We also have Kunti, the mother of the Pandava. The Pandava is the collective name for those 5 sons of Pandu the Pale. Kunti, who has endured much in the forest. And they're all now in the palace in the city of Hastinapura, in the land of the Kurus. We go there now. We journey there on the wings of our hearts, on the road of our mutual voice, on the road of silence and of words. Thank you for being here. Let us begin. So, the sons of Pandu the Pale and of the blind king Dhritarashtra grew up together in the palace. And that palace, which had once been empty of children, was now filled with over 100 laughing, screaming, running, playing little boys. They made boats out of leaves and sailed them in the reflecting pool in the garden. They played with toy wooden chariots beneath the great spreading mango tree. They sang, they ran through the corridors, they fought, they wrestled, they scrambled in the dirt. They were always fighting from the start. Boys will be boys, Gandhari said, with a black silk scarf over her eyes. But Kunti said, no, it is something more. You do not see, Gandhari. I see. The more I try to bring them together, the more something drives them apart. Well, they played and they fought and they squabbled. As they got older, this did not change. Bhima was very big and burly and strong. Duryodhana teased him for his size. So one day Bhima threw Duryodhana in the river. He was not badly hurt, but he was all wet. So that night, Duryodhana took a yellow snake from the garden and put it in Bhima's bed. The snake was poisonous, and it bit Bhima 3 times, but his skin was so tough its fangs could not pierce that skin. In the morning he awoke, saw the snake there, and released it in the garden. So it went year after year, always squabbling between these 2 sets of cousins. Finally, when they were all about 12 years old, they were playing with sticks near the edge of the forest, throwing the sticks this way and that, pretending they were swords, using them this way, that way. Bhima and Duryodhana squared off, using the sticks as swords, whacking each other this way and that, and suddenly, with a great crack, Duryodhana's stick broke in 2. So he ran into the forest and came back with a large branch, bigger than the stick he'd had. "Oh ho," said Bhima, and he ran off into the forest as well. And there was a cracking sound and a thrashing in that forest, and he came running out with a huge tree which he'd uprooted out of the ground with his great strength. And he came running towards Duryodhana as though to clobber him with this great tree. "Wah!" he shouted as he ran, and suddenly a man dressed all in black stepped out of the trees, and he stepped in front of Bhima, and with some lightning movements of his hands, suddenly Bhima was down on the ground and the great tree was upon him. Now Bhima was not badly hurt, for he was a sturdy young man, but he was surprised. He looked up at this man and said, "Who are you?" And the man said, "I am Drona. Bhishma has sent for me, and I have come. You are all in need of schooling, and so I will teach you a few things. Come, I see you can play with sticks. Let us see how you do with weapons. Everyone get your bows and arrows. Let us go to the archery field." Now this man had just come out of nowhere, out of the forest, but he had a very commanding way about him, and he had definitely been able to put Bhima down on the ground with a tree on top of him with hardly any effort at all. So they listened to what he said, they followed his orders, they took their bows and arrows, and they went to the archery field. And once there, Drona took a straw bird from his bag with a blue eye painted on its face, and he gave it to Nakula and said, "Nakula, climb that tree there and put this straw bird as high as you can in a branch of that tree, and then come down." So Nakula scampered up that tree, put the bird up there, and came down. Then Drona drew a line in the sand, and he said, "All of you, get your bows and arrows here, line up right here, and point your arrows at that bird." So they did so, all of them lining up, Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, Bhima, the son of the wind, Arjuna, the son of Indra, king of the gods, Nakula and Sahadeva, the twins with the shining eyes, Duryodhana of the long dark hair, and Dushasana. They all lined up, and they pointed their arrows right at that bird. And Drona paced behind them, and he said, "Now, tell me what you see." Yudhishthira spoke first. "I see the bird, I see the tree." And then Duryodhana, "I see the bird, I see the tree, I see my arm." "Useless," said Drona. "The 2 of you, put your bows and arrows away. Go sit down. The rest of you, what do you see?" So they all spoke in turn, saying what they saw. "I see the bird. I see a cloud in the sky. I see a palace tower far off. I see a hill. I see the ground. I see my arm." "Useless," said Drona. "All of you sit down. Put your bows and arrows away. It is useless to shoot." Finally, only Arjuna was left. "Arjuna," said Drona, "tell me what you see." "I see the bird," he said. "Arjuna, what color is the bird?" "I do not know." "Why is that?" "Because I can only see its eye." "Release your arrow," said Drona. Shung! And he shot his arrow right into that bird. It hit it in the blue painted eye, and the straw bird fell down to the ground. Arjuna went and picked up that bird and brought it to Drona. "Here, my teacher." "Arjuna," said Drona, "I am well pleased with you. I shall make you the greatest warrior this world has ever seen. But I must ask something of you, right here at the start. If I am to teach you, you must swear to me that if we ever meet on a battlefield, you will not hold back, but will fight to the death." Arjuna looked at this man he had just met, who seemed to know so much, and he said, "I swear." And then Bhishma came walking across the archery field. "Drona," he said, "Drona, you have come. Yes, Bhishma, I have come. You sent for me, and I have come. These boys are in need of schooling. Yes, said Bhishma, they are a handful. I am glad you are here. And tell me, my friend, what payment will you require for your services? Bhishma, old man, you know well what my payment will be, what I will ask for when the moment comes. Bhishma looked at him. He did know. He did remember. He remembered how he had gone wandering through many lands, many kingdoms, seeking a teacher for the children of Pandu and of Dhritarashtra, and how, worn out, one day he had come to a small village in the rain, and he had gone to a tea shop and had some tea and sat down and had drunk that tea there on the floor. And he had looked up as the rain pattered down onto the roof, and there was a man dressed all in black, and it was Drona. And they had struck up a conversation, and Drona had told him how once a heavenly being, a divine woman of the clouds and the wind, had come down from the celestial realms down to earth and bathed herself in a river. And then she stepped from the river, the water sparkling as it ran down her body, and she walked through the forest. And nearby was a sage, a man named Bharadwaja, and he had seen this divine celestial woman, and overcome with desire, his seed had spilled into a pot. This Apsara, this divine woman, looked at him, and she smiled, and then she took a step up into the air, and then another, and then she was gone. Well, some months later, a boy was born out of that pot, and Bharadwaja the sage named that boy Drona, born in a pot. Now Bharadwaja had a hermitage in the forest where he taught many children many things, and he raised his son Drona up there, along with the other children, along with Drupada, a prince from a distant kingdom. He taught all of them archery and knowledge of the plant medicines of this world, knowledge of the stars, knowledge of Dharma, knowledge of the Vedas, those ancient scriptures older than the earth itself. And Drona and Drupada had been the best of friends. They'd gone running, laughing through the forest, playing with leaves, playing archery together, practicing this, practicing that, singing songs, laughing, falling asleep at night, looking up at the stars. But time went on, the years passed, and then one day a messenger on a white horse came to that hermitage and brought the news that Drupada's father, the king of Panchala, had died. Drupada burst into tears, his bow and his arrows fell from his hands. But the next day he left, sitting on the back of that white horse. He said goodbye to Drona and the other children, and off he went through the forest to the kingdom of Panchala, to the city of the crocodile, to the yellow palace at the heart of that city, and there he was crowned king of that land. Well, Drona remained in the forest and learned many things from his father Bharadwaja. And after a while his studies were finished, and he went out into the world, wandering through many kingdoms, always in search of knowledge, wisdom about the bow and the arrow, the sword and the spear, about strategy, about the battlefield of the heart and the battlefield in the world. He even wandered into the sacred mountains, and there from a sage he learned about astras, celestial weapons that you use, magical weapons that you use only in the direst of situations. So he traveled the world and learned many things, but he never sought after fame or fortune. Finally he came to a small village and went to the well of that village, and there was a young woman there, and they fell to talking, and soon they fell in love. So he made his home there. Soon they had a son named Aswataman, who was born with a blue jewel in the center of his forehead. So Drona and his wife raised their son Aswataman in a little hut in a little village deep in the forest. But when their son was about 2 years old, he came running home once into the hut, and he said, "Father, mother, all the other children have milk. Why can't I have milk too?" And he burst into tears. And his mother embraced him, and his tears fell down to the floor. And the next day, Drona said goodbye to his wife and his son. And he walked away from that little village and through the forest. And he came to the kingdom of Panchala, and he came to the city of the crocodile, and he came to the yellow palace. And he walked down the halls and he came to the throne room. And there on a golden throne was King Drupada himself. "Your Majesty," said Drona, "my friend, I have come from the forest to ask for your generosity. We learned many things together in that forest. But I have gone on to learn from many sages and masterful men throughout the world. I have even gained knowledge of astras, celestial weapons. So I have come to you seeking your generosity. Might you have a position for me in your court? Might you need my services in your kingdom? Please, my old friend, I seek your friendship." And Drupada the king looked down at him and said, "I am a king, and you are a poor man. Can a master craftsman be friends with a bumbler? Can a wise man be friends with a fool? Can a king be friends with a poor man? No. Friendship only blossoms between equals. We learned together in the forest once, yes, but those days are over. We were but children. Now we are adults. We must deal with adult things. Go to the kitchen. I am sure they will have some fruit for you or an old crust of bread. But then leave. I do not want you here. Go away from my sight. Leave." Drona looked at King Drupada, looked at him for a long time. And then he turned and walked out of that throne room. He walked out of the yellow palace. He walked out of the city of the crocodile. He walked out of the kingdom of Panchala. And with every step he took, he pondered how he might get his revenge upon King Drupada. Finally, he came back to his own village. It was raining there in the forest. But for some reason, he did not return to his own house, but stopped in at a tea shop and had some tea and sat down. And he looked up as rain pattered down onto the roof, and there was a man, and this man was Bhishma. And he told him his story, told him about how he had been humiliated by King Drupada, who had once been his friend, and told him how he hoped one day to get his revenge upon King Drupada. So, standing in that archery field, Bhishma looked at Drona, and he remembered the sound of the rain on that roof. He remembered the smell of cardamom in the air, steam rising from their cups of tea. And he remembered what Drona had said. "Yes, Drona," said Bhishma, I remember well. May you find happiness." And then they all retired to the palace, all of them, and they feasted there with Dhritarashtra, the blind king, and his queen Gandhari with a black scarf over her eyes, and with Kunti, and with Bhishma. And then darkness fell, and the stars shone down, and everyone slept. So Drona, the son of Bharadwaja, taught the sons of Pandu the Pale, and the sons of the blind king Dhritarashtra for many years. And the seasons passed, and they grew up. And finally, when they were all about 18 years of age, Drona went to the king Dhritarashtra, and he said, "My king, it is time to show the world what these sons of yours can do. It is time to show the world the power of our kingdom. I propose that we have a tournament, a great show outside of the city in a large arena." "Yes," said Dhritarashtra, "that is a good idea. For people are muttering about the weakness of our kingdom. They talk of my blindness, and they say that we are ready to be conquered. We must show them that we are strong." So Dhritarashtra gave many orders, and soon craftsmen built a large arena outside the palace, an arena large enough to hold thousands of people. And a day was set, and that day came. And Drona and the Brahmins, they made prayers to the gods and consecrated that place, and thousands came from the cities, and thousands came from other kingdoms, and princes and lords and ladies came of all kinds. And Dhritarashtra came, the blind king, and Gandhari, his queen, with a scarf over her eyes, and Kunti as well, Kunti, the mother of the Pandava. They all sat there under white umbrellas in the sun. And it is said that the gods came as well, sitting on clouds and in the corners of that moment, to see what would happen and to marvel at the feats of strength that would occur. And they did occur. Yes, in that arena marvelous things were done. Yudhishthira did amazing things with spears. Dushasana and Nakula and Sahadeva showed their swordsmanship, the swords flashing in the sun. Bhima and Duryodhana squared off with their clubs, whacking each other in intricate and complicated ways. In fact, their battle got quite heated, and Drona had to separate them. Finally, towards the end of the day, in the afternoon when the sun was moving towards the horizon, Arjuna came out with his bow and his arrows, and he did miraculous things. There was a cow horn dangling from a rope. They set it swinging back and forth, and in the blink of an eye, he filled it with 7 arrows. Shoom! Just like that. They had a wooden fish spinning at the top of a pole, a wooden fish with a hole where its eye would be. Arjuna aimed at that fish, and he shot 3 arrows through that hole. Whew! They went whistling through. And then he showed his knowledge of astras, celestial divine weapons. He took an arrow from his quiver. He shot it straight up into the air. It became a fire. And then it fell to earth and became many fires. Soon there was a mountain of fire descending on the crowd. People were amazed, but they gasped. Horrified, would they all be burned? Then he took a second arrow. He shot it straight up into the air. It became a drop of rain, and then many drops of rain. Finally, rivers of rain fell down from the clouds, and they extinguished the flames, and the flames extinguished the rain, and everyone was amazed, and no one was wet. The crowd roared and gasped and cheered for Arjuna. And then, in that moment, the sun, descending in the sky, sent its rays streaming across the arena, and they fell on the golden breastplate and the golden earrings of a man standing in the eastern gate. They sparkled in the sun. This man was beautiful, built like a mountain, and he strode into the center of the arena, and he said, "I can do all that Arjuna has done, and more besides." And they cleared out a space for him, and he took his bow and his arrows, and he did do everything Arjuna had done, and more. That cow's horn swing on that rope, well, in the blink of an eye, he filled it with 13 arrows. And then he took aim at that wooden fish spinning on the high pole, and he shot 3 arrows through the eye of that fish. And then a servant held a mirror, and with his back turned, looking only in the mirror, this man shot another 3 arrows through the hole in that fish. And then he took an arrow from his quiver, fired it straight up into the air. It became a fire. A mountain of fire was descending once again on the crowd. He took a second arrow, shot it into the air. It became rain. Rivers of rain fell down, putting out the fire. And then he took a third arrow tufted with heron feathers and shot it straight up into the sky. It became a flower. Then hundreds of flowers, then thousands of flowers came raining down onto the crowd. Everyone cheered, they gasped, they roared, they cheered, they were amazed. And then this man pulled his sword out from his sheath, the sun shining in that sword, and he said, "And now, Arjuna, let us fight, you and me, and we will see who is the better warrior." So Arjuna pulled his sword out as well, the two of them squaring off in the center of the arena in the dust. And Drona stepped forward between them, and he said, "Sir, you are facing Arjuna, Arjuna the son of Pandu, Arjuna of the kingdom of Hastinapura. Tell us who you are." And this man lowered his sword, and he said, "I am Karna. Who my parents are, I do not know. I was raised by a driver of horses and his wife. They found me, drifting in a basket on the river, took me from that basket and raised me with love and care. They have raised me, but who my real parents are, I do not know." And he looked down at the ground, and a cloud moved over the sun. And Arjuna stepped forward, and he said, "So, this is not your place. This arena, it is for Kshatriyas, warriors. It is not for the sons of drivers." And Bhima came forward laughing, and he said, "Go back to the barn, you driver's son." But Duryodhana came forward, and he said, "I see greatness in this man. I see glory. I see beauty and great skill. I accept this man, for this world is a mystery, and men are like rivers whose origins are often unknown. I accept him, and if he needs to be a king, Well, we shall make him a king. Come, you Brahmins, come, let us crown this man right now. I give him the kingdom of Anga." And 3 Brahmins came hustling in, and Karna knelt down, and they crowned him then and there in the center of that arena. They crowned him the king of the realm of Anga. And they sprinkled holy water onto the top of his head. And then he stood up, and Duryodhana said, "So, if he needs to be a king, now he is a king. And so let us see, who is the better warrior?" And Karna pulled out his sword, and Arjuna as well, and they squared off, and Drona backed off from between the 2 of them, and he said, "Ready, ready!" And then, at that moment, there was a gasp from the crowd. A gasp, and everyone looked, and there was Kunti standing up, her lower lip quivering as though she were about to speak. And then her eyes rolled back into her head, and she collapsed into the arms of a servant. Someone began fanning her face. Someone went to get some water. "Mother," said Arjuna. And Bhishma came striding into the center of the arena, and he said, "There will be no more fighting today. The sun has gone down. The day is over." And it was true. The sun had hit the rim of the world and was slowly descending. And so, in that last light, Kunti was carried to a chariot, and they went back to the palace. And the people from that arena they left and went back to their homes. Finally, in the orange light of the sunset, in the center of that dusty arena, there was only Karna and Duryodhana. And Karna said, "Great prince, what can I give you in return? What can I give you to make up for this generosity you have shown me?" And Duryodhana said, "I ask only for your friendship." "You shall have that," said Karna. And in the last light of the sun, the 2 of them embraced in that empty arena. And then they made their way to the palace, and everyone feasted there. And when the feast was over, darkness had fallen, and the stars shone down, and everyone slept. Well, the next morning, Drona summoned all his students to the archery field. They were all there: Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadeva, Duryodhana, and Dushasana. And Drona said, "My students, you have learned much from me. You have done well. But now I must ask you for my payment, and it is this. Bring me King Drupada, alive, bound in ropes, here to this spot by sunset today." They looked at him, astounded. "Did you not hear me? Are you not warriors? Have I not asked you something? Have I not requested something of you? Go!" And they staggered up, and Yudhishthira shouted to his servants for his horse, and Duryodhana did the same, and servants came running with horses and with tackle and swords and spears. Arjuna put on all the arrows he had. They got on their horses, the dust went up, and with a great flurry of neighing and a storm of hooves, they went off out of that archery field, and the dust went up, rising into the air, and then the sound of those hooves died away. And only Drona was left, in his black cloak, in the center of the archery field. And he sat down. He sat down on the ground. He stilled his body, he stilled his mind, and he closed his eyes. He breathed in, he breathed out. The sun rose higher in the sky as the birds sang in the trees. Still he sat there, like a statue, without moving. A cloud moved into the middle of the sky and then drifted away. Soon the sun was at the zenith, the midpoint of the sky. It shone down, nothing cast a shadow. A dried mango leaf fell from a tree, this way and that, fell down into the dirt. Still Drona sat, breathing in, breathing out. A servant went past behind a nearby wall, singing as she went, and then the sound drifted away. The wind blew, a bird sang, the sun began to decline towards the western horizon. An ant moved across the dirt, its shadow lengthening as it walked. Still, Drona sat there, his eyes closed, breathing in, breathing out. Soon the sun was near the horizon. only a thumb's width away. And then there came a sound, far off, like the thrumming of bees, perhaps. And then it was clearly thundering, galloping hooves. Horses were coming, and if you looked, you would have seen the dust rising up. And it got louder and louder, and then suddenly Duryodhana burst in on his horse, the flag of the kingdom of Panchala over the back of his horse. And Nakula and Sahadeva come in, both of them wounded in the shoulder, and Bhima came in, Yudhishthira, all of them. They came in, and finally Arjuna, last one there, with someone, a man, on the back of his horse, bound in ropes. And they reared up the horses there in the center, and they settled down, and Bhima went to that horse, and he took this man, bound in ropes, and threw him down into the dust before Drona. And Drona opened his eyes, and he stood up, and he looked, and he saw their man there, tied up in ropes right before him. And Drona said, "And now, King Drupada, I ask you again, shall we not be friends? Shall we not deal generously with one another? I ask you now, I will not ask you a third time. Do you want my friendship?" And Duryodhana came forward and took the gag out of the king's mouth. And Drupada looked up at Drona, and he said, "Yes, yes, Drona, I desire your friendship." "Good," said Drona, "good. Let us be friends then, as we were once before in the forest. But, as you have said, friendship can only blossom between equals. So it will go this way. I will take the northern half of your kingdom for my own, but you shall keep the southern half of your kingdom. So, I am a king as well now, am I not? So, we are equals, and so we can be friends. King to king, we can be friends. Boys, send him back." And Duryodhana put the gag back in the king's mouth, and Bhima lifted him up and set him on a horse, with his hands still bound behind him. And Sahadeva slapped the backside of that horse, and it whinnied, and off it went away from the archery field. And a little dust rose up, and then fell down, and the sound of the hooves died away. And Drona looked at all of them there, at Yudhishthira, at Bhima, at Arjuna, Nakula and Sahadeva, at Duryodhana and Dushasana, and he said, "My students, your schooling is now over. Let us deal generously with one another. Let us go and feast." And so they feasted in the palace feasting hall, and Bhishma was there, and the king Dhritarashtra, and his wife Gandhari, and Kunti as well. And the bards sang, and the delicious food was brought out from the kitchens. And at the end of this feast, Dhritarashtra the king stood up and said, "My nephews, the Pandava, I wish you safe travels tomorrow." And Yudhishthira said, "Safe travels? What journey is it that we are making?" "Ah, you have not heard," said Dhritarashtra. "I would like someone from our family to go to the city of Varanavata, for there is a festival of Shiva there, and I want someone to go. So tomorrow you and your brothers will make this journey." "Is this your desire?" said Yudhishthira. "It is," said the king. "Then we will go." Duryodhana raised his glass. "Safe travels, my cousins. May that city of fire and of light treat you well." So the feasting went on, and the bards sang. And when that feast was over, everyone went their separate ways. And Kunti and her sons, the Pandava, they made their way across the palace garden to their chambers. But Yudhishthira and Bhima hung back, and in the gathering darkness they spoke there beside the reflecting pool. And Bhima said, "My brother, I do not like this sudden trip to Varanavata. No, I do not like it at all. It smells like a trap. You know Duryodhana is out to get us. You know he sees us as a threat to his claim on the throne." "What you say may be true, my brother," said Yudhishthira. "Perhaps it is a trap, but if so, it is only a trap in which the true natures of our cousins will be caught." "What do you mean?" "I mean that you can know a man or a woman by their actions, and so if it is a trap, we will come to know our cousins better."
I will keep my eyes peeled, said Bhima.
And the two of them turned and began to walk across the palace garden towards their royal chambers. But as they did so, a figure came to them out of the night, and it was Bhishma. "Good evening to the two of you," said Bhishma. "It is good that I have found you here, for I have a poem for you." "A poem?" said Yudhishthira. "Yes," said Bhishma, and it goes like this. "When Agni comes to visit, the mole is wiser than the sparrow. The 5-petaled flower must sleep until tomorrow." "A poem to Agni, the god of fire," said Yudhishthira. "Yes," said Bhishma. "Remember this poem well. Keep it in your hearts, and it will teach you many things. Good night." And with that, Bhishma slipped away into the darkness. And Yudhishthira and Bhima stood there for a while, wondering about the words of that poem. And then they went into the palace, and they found their royal chambers, and they lay down, and the starlight shone down, and everyone in that kingdom slept.
But far off in that darkness there was a bedraggled horse, and on the back of that horse there was a man tied in ropes with a gag in his mouth. His hands were tied too, so he could not direct that horse, but the horse knew where to go. And it made its way through the kingdom of Panchala towards the city of the crocodile. And at the outskirts of that city, soldiers in the dark saw their king Drupada on the back of that horse, and they rushed to him. The king, they cried, and they took the gag from his mouth, and soon the captain of the guard was there. And quickly they took the king back to the palace, the yellow palace, at the center of the city of the crocodile. And there the king paced back and forth, and his captain of the guard said, "Your Majesty, we have failed, but we will build weapons. We will strengthen our army. We will conquer Drona and his students with the power of the sword and the spear." "No," said the king. "We have the power of the sword and the spear, but Drona has something more. He has magical weapons, astras. He learned these on his pilgrimages all through the world. If we are going to beat Drona and his students, we need something more than the spear and the sword. We need magical powers. So, my friend, summon the Brahmins."
Hello, hello. Jay Leeming here with you on the Crane Bag podcast. Thank you for attending to this story. Thank you for giving it your attention. I invite you to take a little breath, put it into your hands, and offer it up to this story. For stories are like animals. They are beings which come to visit us. And may this one visit us, and may we hear what it has to teach. As usual, as always, as right now, I invite you to find a moment in this story that calls to you, that jumps out at you, a moment you like, a moment you can't stand, and a moment that just grabs you in some way, that pokes you. And remember it. Remember it and don't let go. That's your door into the story. For me, the moment which grabs me is the sun falling across the arena onto the golden breastplate of Karna. Karna, who is the brother of the Pandava brothers, their eldest brother, and does not know. Karna, who has done everything right, it seems, who has worked hard to master these particular arts of the sword and the bow and all of that, and has not come up through the channels. Arjuna has come up through the channels, more or less, right? He's, the son of a king, and he's raised as a prince. Karna is not. It's such a moving scene, and he comes in, they don't know, and they're going to square off. And then Arjuna and the others get snooty. Who are you to come in here? What right do you have? Boy from nowhere, boy who grew up taking care of horses in a barn. They're snooty. But Duryodhana picks him up and says, I accept this man. This world is a mystery, and men are like rivers whose origins are often unknown. Men and women are like rivers whose origins are often unknown. What do we know of our births? I heard a Hindu person, a Swami Veda, say once, some of our, when children are born, they get a third of their being from the mother, a third from the father, and a third from some other mysterious place. So there's mystery in birth, in beginnings, and especially with Karna. Remember, Kunti gave birth to him in this strange way. She was given a mantra by a sage. After caring for that sage, felt badly that this would cause gossip and talk in the village because she was so young, put him in a basket, and he floated away with his golden breastplate and his golden earrings. So here he comes again, and the sun smiles on him, shining on him in that arena. Beautiful. And Kunti, well, she stands up, is going to speak, and then does not. Why do I connect with this? Well, for me personally, I don't know. I guess I was bullied a bunch as a kid, and I didn't feel I did anything to deserve that. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I was just a gawky, inward-looking kid with glasses who didn't play football. And I was bullied. So it felt like something beyond me, like fate or destiny. I mean, those are big words, right? But just kind of whacked me in that way. And with Karna, I feel that. He's done everything right. And, well, he is not acknowledged as their brother. At least not yet. We shall see what happens. And again, I equate him in some ways with us now, many of us in this world, not brought up in a certain school of thought, not brought up by elders, not having a community of elders. Well, maybe we did. If you did, that's wonderful. But many of us now in the modern world, those elders are not there. Those teachings aren't there for us. We have to make do. And we stumble into the arena and try to make a place there. So I just love that golden moment of the sun shining on Karna as he comes in. And I love Duryodhana accepting him and their embrace at the end of this show in the arena. And then we get Drona, and honestly, I could have skipped his story, but I wanted you to hear it. I wanted to explore it because it's kind of cool. All these characters have big backstories. It's great. And his whole thing with this King Drupada and the way he waits, meditating there as they go to get Drupada, wonderful stuff. I should say there's a lot of kind of bows and arrows, sword fighting at this part of the story, as you might have noticed. But it is an epic. It has many colors in it, many spices in its repertoire. And this is boys growing up right now, so that's why. Also, a lot of male characters. I fully realize that. But there are more female characters coming, including some quite strong ones coming up. So I hope this isn't off-putting to you to have all this kind of fighting running around, martial arts and everything, because it's only one spice in this large soup, in this large dish, which is the Mahabharata. So the question is, where are you in this story? Where is the warrior part of you? Man or woman, whoever you are. Is that the warrior who's shut out, like Karna, and then comes back in? Is it, what do you feel like? What's your way into this story? Bhishma there, Kunti, Gandhari putting the scarf over her eyes. What's your way into this story? Have you been shut out? Have you been a chosen one? Have you been the son of the wind? Have you been the son of Dharma, doing always what is right? Have you been the mother, sent out into the forest, going out, choosing to go out into the forest with your husband, Pandu, and living there in exile with him? Have you been the Brahmin, saying the words over the fire? Those are the questions for us. And is the boat in the water? Have we begun? Are we floating down the river of this story? I hope so. We've met most of the main characters. A few are missing, but Bhishma, the old one who made the vow to give up forever the love of woman so that there might be peace in the kingdom. And we've met the Pandava, Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, Bhima, the son of the wind, Arjuna, the son of Indra, king of the gods, Nakula and Sahadeva, the twins with the shining eyes, and Duryodhana and Dushasana, a different set of cousins descended from Gandhari. And they're only two of 100 sons she had, but they're the ones we mostly hear about. And then Dhritarashtra, the blind king, and his queen Gandhari, who has a scarf over her eyes so that she may join her husband in darkness. And Kunti, who we haven't heard a lot from, but has endured much in this story. And we will hear more from her later. And again, I want to say, of course, I am not a Hindu. Of course, I did not grow up in India. So my apologies if I am way off base on anything I bring to this story. This is an act of bridging between two cultures. That's what it is. And I have tried to learn as much as I can and continue to do so. But I can't emphasize enough the sacred nature of this story. The Bhagavad Gita is in the Mahabharata. That's one of the most sacred texts of Hinduism. And throughout, we have this wild landscape of sages, renouncing everything and being one with the divine in the forest. It's a marvelous landscape. The introvert in me loves that. And the spiritual seeker in me loves that. They're just all over the place. And these divine apsaras come and dazzle them with their beauty and go away. And then you get a kid born in a pot. Wild, miraculous. The number of strange births in this epic so far, well, it's the numbers going up. And if you're seeking other ways into this story, there are many. My way in was a film by Peter Brook, B-R-O-O-K, a 5-hour film of his 9-hour play. The 5-hour film's in 3 parts, so don't worry. I saw that about 20 years ago, and it first awoke my interest in this story. Then there's lots of versions. There's one by William Buck. It's very poetic. It's kind of it's not a scholarly edition, but it's, it gets you the story, more or less. There's one by Raja Gopalachari, who has a long name, but has written a short book with many of the stories of this epic in it. And then there's the whole thing. You can get, I just did, the 10-volume set by Bibek Debroy, D-E-B-R-O-Y, which is the entire story translated into English. Then there's the Clay Sanskrit Library, which did 15 volumes of this story and then ran out of money, apparently. And then there's J.A. Van Buitenen, B-U-I-T-E-N-E-N, who completed 5 volumes of this epic story before he died as well. So anyway, those are just some ways into this story, the scholarly ways. And there's also the way in of just hearing it from me, hopefully, well enough, and connecting to it in some way. I hope you can connect. That's how these stories are kept alive, because they are a mirror of us and of our world. the great poem of the world Vyasa is writing. So he says at one point in this story. And may we see our world in it. People have seen their world in it, and that's why this story has endured so long and continues to flourish in many parts of the world. And I would remember the little story about the ant going along the road, and the rabbit who stops and says, "Ant, where are you going?" And the ant says, "I'm going to Mecca." And the rabbit, "Mecca's a long way away, Mr. Ant there. It's a long way. You're never going to get there. You're just an ant." And the ant says, "It doesn't matter. I'm going." I love that little story. It doesn't matter. I'm going. What is that statement? It's either a statement of fact, like I am going, or it's a statement perhaps that it doesn't matter if I get there. What matters is that I am going. Perhaps the means, the way there, the path is as important as the journey. Yeah, perhaps more important. Perhaps the path is the destination. That's what Basho says, Matsuo Basho, if I can just start flinging stuff out. The journey is the destination. Wow. So why do I think of this? I think of this because it's a big story, and who knows how far I'll get. But I thank you for your attention to this story, and I hope to get to the whole thing, and we'll see what happens. I love it dearly, and so may it be so that it becomes a real thing in my voice and in this interesting space between us here, dear listener. Thank you for listening to this. If you're able to support the podcast, please do so. That allows me to take on projects like this. You can do that via Patreon, patreon.com/storyjl. It's a monthly thing. You can also hear more stories at my website, jayleeming.com, jayleeming.com. That's the story. Thank you to all those who have supported this work. I really, really appreciate it, especially through the pandemic. .com, we should spell that CALM perhaps, calm.com. Let us be calm. Let us not end with calm, commercial. Let us end with calm, the leaf floating on the water. Let us remember the trees rooted in the ground of this story, and how they flourish and feel the bite of the wind, the winter wind, and how they feel the poem of the summer wind and the spring wind. Let us remember this story and the trees in it, the way this story is rooted in the ground, this earth in which we inhabit. New Jersey, Switzerland, Iceland, Hungary, India, Hastinapura. It is all the same earth. And this story, though it comes from India, may it speak to us as well, in a way that we can hear in our hearts. Thank you for listening to this, and take care.